night descends slowly, like a still sheet of water, laying soft shadows across the room. Beyond the window, distant lights tremble gently in the wind, and time itself seems to breathe more slowly, much like you after a long day. Perhaps this is one of those rare moments when every sound softens enough for us to listen to the smallest thoughts within ourselves. Let your shoulders loosen, allow your breathing to become steady, and step into a journey that does not hurry toward answers. Above us, across the vast sky, the mysteries of the universe continue to exist in quiet patience, neither loud nor insistent, simply waiting to be told through unhurried stories. From distant stars to the untouched stretches of darkness, science sometimes resembles a tranquil river flowing through human memory and imagination. This is not only a story about space, but a gentle pause, a place where you may rest, listen, and allow sleep to arrive naturally. Cosmic scale mysteries. The universe as a whole. As night widens across the sky, it becomes difficult to know exactly what is moving and what is still. The stars appear motionless, yet their light began its journey long before our eyes were ready to notice it. On certain nights, if you look long enough, you may feel as though you are drifting with the vastness itself, not leaving the earth, but simply relaxing into a very old question. Where is this universe going? For a long time, humanity believed that everything would eventually slow down. Gravity, like a patient hand, would draw galaxies closer together over the years. But when telescopes turned toward distant stellar explosions, their light told a different story. Galaxies are not merely moving apart. They are moving apart faster with time, as though space itself is quietly expanding, gently yet without pause. No one truly knows what drives that expansion. It is called by a simple name, dark energy. A name that quietly admits that sometimes we have only touched the edge of understanding. Perhaps it is an inherent nature of empty space, a property that has always existed, yet remains too subtle to feel. Perhaps it is a slow current that changes with the age of the universe. And perhaps, across immense distances where imagination struggles to follow, gravity behaves in ways unfamiliar to us. Whatever the reason, that expansion makes the future feel quieter. One very distant day, galaxies beyond our local neighborhood may drift out of sight forever, like boats disappearing beyond the horizon of a nighttime ocean. Amid this endless widening, humanity continues to listen, not with ears, but with large antennas turning slowly beneath the sky. At times, science resembles patience more than discovery. Quiet control rooms, flickering screens, streams of data moving across displays like a heartbeat. We search for a signal, not because we are certain it exists, but because the thought that someone else might also be looking up at their sky carries a strange feeling, both loneliness and hope. If one day a truly unusual signal appears, it may be very small, a repeating sequence, a narrow frequency, a sound belonging neither to aircraft nor satellite. Observers would not celebrate too quickly. They would check again and then once more. Telescopes elsewhere would be invited to listen as well, like many people tilting their heads toward a distant whisper. And even if that signal were confirmed, it might remain more a question than an answer. A beacon? An accidental leak of technology? Or simply a natural phenomenon we do not yet fully understand? The greatest change might not lie in the content of the message, but in the simple truth that we would no longer be the only ones sending signals into the darkness. While we listen to the nearby sky, other telescopes look farther, deeper toward the past. Light needs time to travel. So the farther we look, the closer we see to the universe's earliest days. And sometimes, what appears causes astronomers to pause longer than expected. Some galaxies seem too mature for their age. They shine brightly, possess clear structure, and contain dust and heavy elements, signs that usually require long periods to form. It is like walking into an ancient city and realizing it was already complete before history had begun to write itself. Perhaps the first stars were larger and burned faster than we imagined. Perhaps black holes were born early and helped shape everything around them. Or perhaps light itself has misled us, altered by dust and distance, changing the story it carries. Each possibility opens a small adjustment in how we understand beginnings. And then another question appears, gentle yet deeper. What shape does the universe have? We know that we see only a very small portion, limited by the time light has had to reach us. Beyond that horizon, space continues. It may stretch endlessly, without boundary or outer edge, or it may resemble the surface of an immense sphere, finite, yet without an ending point. If you traveled far enough in one direction, in theory, you might return to where you began, without ever encountering a wall. Some ideas grow stranger still, imagining space as an endless mirrored corridor where patterns might repeat at unimaginable distances. Scientists search for traces of this within the ancient light left from the beginning, comparing patterns across the sky like someone looking for repetition in gentle waves. So far, the answer remains silent. That silence is not a refusal. It is more like the ocean at night, not resisting the observer, simply too vast. And then, when we travel so far that the equations themselves begin to tremble, the final question appears. What happened before everything began? Science's most reliable descriptions lead us to a young universe, hot and bright, expanding rapidly. Yet the closer we move toward that first moment, the more familiar rules lose their certainty. Time and space, two concepts that seem obvious, may have come into existence alongside the very event we call the Big Bang. If so, asking what came before may be like asking where north lies beyond the North Pole. Even so, human imagination continues to take a few steps further. Some ideas suggest that an older universe once collapsed and then rebounded like a breath. Other hypotheses propose that our universe is only a bubble rising within a wider reality. And there are gentler thoughts as well, that all space and time may have appeared as a natural fluctuation within deeper energy fields. The difficulty lies in the traces. The earliest moments may have erased their own memory, like ocean waves smoothing away footprints in the sand before dawn arrives. Perhaps what matters most is not that we do not yet know the answers. It is that we continue to ask the questions. In the quiet room where you are listening now, your breathing remains steady. The earth turns slowly beneath your feet, carrying oceans and sleeping cities. Farther away, the sun drifts in orbit around the center of the galaxy. And that galaxy, too, is moving away from countless others, carried by the silent expansion of space. Everything is in motion, yet nothing is in a hurry. Somewhere, perhaps, another being may also be looking up at their sky and wondering the same question humanity has asked for thousands of years. What is the universe? And whether anyone else is listening. The answer has not arrived, and tonight, perhaps it does not need to. Sometimes peace lies in allowing those questions to drift gently through the mind, like quiet stars passing a window. You do not need to hold on to them. Simply observe for a while, then let them continue their journey, while you slowly drift into deeper rest, where the universe continues to expand very far and very quietly. Solar system oddities, mysteries of the solar system. And as the vast questions about the universe gradually settle, like water smoothing itself after a gentle wind, our gaze slowly turns back towards something closer. There is no need to travel as far as the galaxies at the edge of sight, because even within the sun's small home, strangeness has quietly existed for a very long time. The planets circling that familiar star resemble old companions, each carrying a story of their own, never in a hurry to tell everything, offering only enough to make us linger a little longer when we think of them. There is a world that hides behind thick layers of cloud, glowing at dawn or quietly following after sunset. From Earth, it appears gentle and familiar, almost like a twin sibling to us. Yet if you could imagine standing upon its surface, you would realize that everything moves to a different rhythm. That planet rotates in the opposite direction from most others, so slowly that a single day lasts longer than its own year. The sun would rise in the west, drift across the sky for many months, and slowly disappear in the east. No one knows with certainty what caused it to become this way. Perhaps it was an ancient collision when the solar system was still young and chaotic. Or perhaps enormous winds within its dense atmosphere patiently guided the planet's rotation into its own path over billions of years. Thinking about it feels like remembering something very old, an event so distant that only its slow motion remains as a trace in the present. A little farther away, a red world rests beneath paler sunlight. Its deserts stretch like dried oceans, and winds pass through vast canyons once touched by water. From time to time, within that thin atmosphere, scientists detect signs of a gas that cannot remain long without being continually renewed. Methane. It appears and disappears like a faint breath upon cold glass. Perhaps reactions between rock and deep underground water quietly created. Perhaps ancient ice is melting little by little. And some wonder, very gently, whether tiny living organisms might exist in darkness beneath the frozen soil. No one rushes toward conclusions. Observers simply continue watching patiently, like listening to a dream that has not yet finished telling itself. Farther still, a pale blue world drifts at an angle, as though someone had accidentally laid it on its side. Instead of spinning upright like Earth, it almost rolls around the sun. Its seasons last for decades, where one pole may remain in constant sunlight for many years, only to sink into darkness for just as long. To imagine standing there is like living inside an endless sunset. One hypothesis suggests that a massive object once struck it early in its history, permanently altering its axis. Yet it is also possible that smaller forces, repeated over immense stretches of time, slowly turned an entire world without any violent collision at all. Sometimes, great change does not arrive in a single moment, but through countless gentle touches, no one notices. Farther outward, sunlight becomes only a faint memory. There, a deep blue planet turns within the cold, yet it is far from still. Its winds race at unimaginable speeds, faster than many of the strongest storms on Earth. At times, enormous dark marks appear in its atmosphere, like bruises upon the ocean's blue skin. They grow, drift, and disappear after only a few short years. A brief blink for a planet that has existed for billions. No one fully understands why a place so distant and cold holds such intense energy within it. Perhaps outward calm does not always reflect what is happening deep inside. Closer again, around the north pole of a planet encircled by rings as thin as a silver band, there exists a shape that invites long silence from those who see it. A vast hexagon, formed by circulating winds with almost geometric precision. It is not a solid object, only a pattern of motion, yet it has endured for decades, perhaps longer. In laboratories on Earth, rapidly spinning fluids sometimes create similar polygons, as though nature enjoys repeating familiar designs at every scale. Yet imagining such a perfect form drifting quietly above a planet billions of kilometers away feels like witnessing architecture built from wind. And then there is a storm humanity knows so well that it has become more a character than a phenomenon. A deep red vortex spins endlessly upon the surface of the largest planet in the Sun's family. It has existed longer than many human generations, observed since the first telescopes were lifted toward the sky. At times, it was large enough to swallow several Earths. Now it is shrinking, its colors slowly changing over the years, like a whirl growing old at an unhurried pace. The surrounding currents of gas feed and stretch it, much like flowing water sustaining a turning eddy in a river. No one knows how long it will remain. Perhaps one day it will fade away, as gently as a cloud dissolving in a quiet afternoon. Or perhaps it will stabilize at a smaller size and continue turning for centuries more. When we think about all of this, the solar system no longer resembles the neat circular diagram found in textbooks. It feels more like a wide garden where each world carries its own character. One spins backward, one exhales a mysterious gas, another lies tilted beneath endless light. Somewhere, winds form geometry. Somewhere else, a storm grows old before our eyes. And what feels comforting is that all of these strange things continue in silence. Right now, as you are listening, those storms are still turning. Metallic clouds continue to drift. Seasons lasting decades continue to change the light across distant horizons. They do not require observation. They do not require complete understanding. They simply exist within their own rhythm. Like you're breathing now, slow, steady, and very quiet. Exotic astrophysics and extreme objects. And while distant storms continue to turn within the quiet of the solar system, imagination sometimes wishes to take one more step, gently like someone leaving a familiar garden to walk onto a wider road. There is no need to hurry. Simply allow your gaze to drift farther from the sun's warm light, toward the darkness between the stars where shadow grows deeper, denser, and gentle in its own particular way. Within that darkness are worlds that belong to no one. They were once born around a star, circling as other planets do. But in the chaotic early days of young star systems, accidental gravitational pulls pushed them outward. A single pass too close, a slight shift in orbit, and the planet left the light forever. No more sunrise, no more sunset, only a long journey between the stars, beneath skies where no sun rises. They are called wanderers. They are not easy to see because they reflect almost no light. Occasionally, when such a planet passes in front of a more distant star, its gravity gently bends the light behind it, like water trembling when a fish slips beneath the surface. In that brief moment, we know it exists. A solitary world, perhaps still holding warmth deep inside from the days of its formation. Perhaps beneath thick ice, water remains liquid. And somewhere within absolute darkness, oceans untouched by starlight may continue their slow movement. The thought is not as frightening as it may seem. It feels more like a long journey through a quiet night, where there is no clear destination, yet no urgency either. as thought travels farther still, we begin to notice that the very existence of everything around us carries a delicate fragility. The small numbers within physics, the masses of particles, the strength of forces, the way protons and neutrons hold together, appear to rest within very narrow ranges. Shift them only slightly, and stars might burn too quickly or never ignite at all. Carbon, the element familiar to life, might never form. Complex molecules might never have had a chance to exist. No one knows why those values lie exactly where they do. Some search for deeper laws, as though the universe were following a piece of music, of which we have only heard the opening notes. Others imagine that many universes may exist, each arranged differently, and that we simply happen to live in one that allows us to ask questions. Whatever the answer may be, the feeling resembles discovering that a key fits perfectly into a lock. Not because it was made especially for you, but because you are standing in the room it happens to open. Farther away still lie the remains of stars that ended their lives in anything but gentleness. When a massive star collapses beneath its own weight, matter is compressed beyond imagination. Protons and electrons merge together, leaving behind a sphere so small that a city might surround it, yet heavier than the sun itself. If it were ever possible to touch such material, which it is not, even a small spoonful would weigh more than everything you have ever lifted combined. Yet deep within that immense pressure, matter is no longer familiar. It may form strange structures, sometimes compared to layered sheets or long strands, where nuclear forces and electric charge quietly struggle against one another. These neutron stars spin rapidly. Some rotate hundreds of times each second, sending beams of light sweeping through space like distant lighthouses. When one of those beams happens to reach Earth, we perceive a steady rhythm, so precise that it can measure time more accurately than many clocks on the ground. Sometimes they suddenly speed up ever so slightly, as though a heart skipped a beat and gently corrected itself. Those small changes tell us about interiors no one can see. Not everything in the universe is so heavy. Tiny particles are passing through you even now, through walls, through stone, through your body, leaving no trace behind. Neutrinos. They are born within the sun, within exploding stars, and within places where light itself struggles to escape. Billions pass through you every second, as softly as wind moving through a field. To catch even one, humanity has built enormous tanks of water deep underground or within Antarctic ice. And when, on rare occasions, a neutrino touches something, it produces a faint blue flash, brief as the blink of an ocean. Out there, other particles travel far faster. Cosmic rays carry such immense energy that a single particle may hold more kinetic energy than a strongly thrown ball. They strike the atmosphere and create showers of particles spreading across kilometers. No one is entirely certain where they come from. Perhaps they are remnants of exploding stars. Perhaps they originate from galaxies feeding enormous black holes. Sometimes, very far away, a brief flash occurs. A gamma ray burst. In only a few seconds, it may release more energy than the sun will produce throughout its entire lifetime. Yet space is so vast that most of these events pass unnoticed. Only patient telescopes record the faint signals arriving billions of years late. It may sound violent, but distance becomes a thick blanket of safety. These extreme events are usually only stories told by light from far away. Some neutron stars carry magnetic fields so powerful that atoms themselves are stretched like threads. When their crusts crack, released energy travels outward like the ringing of a metal bell through space. These magnetars are rare, yet they remind us that physics can sometimes speak louder than imagination. And still, among all of this, steady pulses of light continue to turn within the darkness. Pulsars, the clocks of the galaxy. They spin, shine, and spin again, continuing for millions of years. If you could remain long enough somewhere in space, you would see those flashes repeat with perfect precision, like the breathing of the universe itself. Perhaps that is what makes everything feel comforting, even in the most extreme places, where pressure crushes matter, where magnetic fields bend atoms, where energy erupts and fades. Rhythm remains. Repeated motion, patient cycles, like waves that always return to shore, like night slowly softening before sleep arrives. And as you allow these stories to drift through your mind, without needing to understand everything, without needing to remember, you may begin to notice that the universe is not only a place of enormity and danger, it is also a place of steadiness, a place where even the most powerful things unfold in silence. Hidden matter in cosmic structure. And while the distant pulses of pulsars continue their steady turning in the darkness, like clocks that never grow tired, another feeling begins to emerge. It is no longer awe before the extreme, but a deeper quietness, as though the universe were gently leaning closer, inviting us to notice what can't be seen. Because sometimes, the most important things are not the ones that shine. When you look at a spiral galaxy from afar, its arms curl like silver smoke. Stars move around its center, slowly yet with certainty. At first thought, it seems that the luminous part tells the entire story. But when astronomers measured the motion of stars along the outer edges, something strange appeared. They move faster than the visible mass alone should be able to hold them, like watching a spinning carousel without seeing the ropes that keep it in place. Something is there. It does not glow, does not reflect, and leaves no trace in ordinary telescopes. Only its gravity, gentle yet persistent, embraces the galaxy like an invisible hand. It is called dark matter, not because it carries the color of night, but because it refuses to take part in the conversation of light. Perhaps it consists of particles never yet discovered, passing through us each day without collision. Perhaps it belongs to another aspect of nature beyond familiar senses. Whatever it may be, it seems to outweigh everything we can see combined. Stars, planets, oceans, and even your own body. All are only the surface layer upon a far greater, invisible ocean. The thought is not cold. It feels more like realizing that the room you sit in has walls extending beyond the reach of the lamp. And then another small question appears, as quietly as footsteps upon a soft carpet. If dark matter is something we have never seen, even ordinary matter, the protons and neutrons that make up everything familiar also seems to be missing in part. Measurements from the universe's earliest moments suggest that more normal matter should exist than we can find within stars and galaxies. Some of it has slipped from view. Not truly gone, only spread too thin, too hot, stretched along long filaments connecting clusters of galaxies. Those streams of gas resemble vapor dissolving into morning air. You know it is there because light passing through changes ever so slightly, carrying traces like a discrete message. Only after many years of patient observation did scientists begin to recognize that this ordinary matter still exists. It has simply chosen to remain far from attention. The universe, it seems, always keeps a part of itself in reserve. Elsewhere, that reserve becomes more absolute. There are regions of space where every path leads inward. When a star too massive reaches the end of its life, it collapses, bending space so deeply that even light cannot escape. A boundary appears, not a wall, not a surface, but a point of no return. Outside, hot gas swirls brightly. Jets of matter may extend thousands of light years, like long brush strokes across a dark canvas. But inside, no one truly knows what happens. Equations describe a place where density becomes infinite. Other ideas suggest deeper structures where information is not destroyed, only hidden. All we can do is listen at the edge, observing how matter falls inward, how light bends around it, how time itself appears to slow for distant observers. It feels like standing before a closed door, knowing an entire room lies beyond it, while the key does not belong to you. And then, not long ago, humanity began to hear something that once existed only in imagination. When two black holes orbit and merge, they do not collide in the familiar sense. Instead, space itself trembles. Ripples spread outward, stretching and compressing distance along their path. On Earth, instruments detected changes so small they are almost impossible to believe, shorter than the width of a proton. Yet, from those vibrations, we know that two objects heavier than the sun became one somewhere far away, like hearing the echo of a bell across a valley at night. You do not see the bell. You do not see the hand that struck it. Only the sound arrives late, gentle and clear. Even the oldest sky carries such subtle signs. Across space exists a faint, cold light from the time when the first atoms formed. It does not illuminate your room, yet it comes from every direction, like warmth lingering long after a fire has faded. When satellites measured it, they found tiny differences in temperature, slightly warmer and cooler patches. Those variations were once ripples of density in the young universe. After billions of years, they became galaxies, star clusters, and the place where we now exist. Looking at that light is like seeing a photograph taken when the universe was still an infant. And within that photograph lies a region that invites quiet curiosity, a vast area slightly colder than those around it. Not dramatically different, only enough to notice. Perhaps it is coincidence, like an oddly shaped cloud drifting through a familiar sky. Perhaps the light passed through an unusually empty region before reaching us. Or perhaps it is the trace of something deeper we have not yet understood. No one is certain. What is remarkable is that the universe allows questions to exist without demanding immediate answers. If you pause for a moment now, you may notice that much of the story unfolds in darkness. Invisible mass holds galaxies together. Thin, hot gas stretches between clusters. Black holes conceal their interiors. Waves of space pass unnoticed. Ancient light surrounds every direction like a gentle memory, a universe of unseen things. And strangely, that feels familiar. Because in everyday life, much of what matters most is not clearly visible either. Peace has no shape. Time has no color. A beautiful memory has no weight. Yet it can still hold us in place. Perhaps that is why the universe does not feel distant. Right now, as you listen, galaxies continue turning within invisible arms. Ancient light still drifts through this room, passing through walls and through your own body without notice. Somewhere, space itself has just trembled from two black holes merging billions of years ago. And yet, where you are remains calm. Your breathing remains steady. And within that quietness, the unseen continues to support everything. Very gently. Life and alien possibilities. And while unseen things continue to quietly support galaxies within the darkness, another question begins to appear. Light as breath, touching a window on a cold night. It is no longer a question of mass or gravity. but something closer to the human heart. Within that vast expanse, might someone else also be listening? There was a night like that many years ago, when a radio telescope turned slowly beneath a quiet sky. It did not look with light, but listened through radio waves, as though placing an ear against the ocean of the stars. Within the steady stream of data, a signal appeared. It grew stronger, reached a peak, and then vanished in less than a minute and a half. There were no words, no melody, only a neat sequence of oscillations, so clear that the observer circled it and wrote a single brief word beside it. Wow. Afterward, the sky returned to silence. People listened again many times, using different instruments, but the signal never returned. Perhaps it was only a rare natural phenomenon, perhaps an accidental reflection from somewhere near Earth, and perhaps, though no one claims certainty, it was a greeting that passed by before we were ready to understand it. What matters is not what it was, but the feeling it left behind. A single footprint upon a wide shore, leaving us to wonder whether someone once walked there before the tide erased it. Our galaxy contains hundreds of billions of stars. Many of them are far older than the sun. If life and intelligence can arise in many places, then someone may have had far more time than we have to explore, to build, to leave traces behind. Yet when we look outward, we do not see cities among the stars, no trains of light crossing the sky, no clear repeating signals. That silence is sometimes called a paradox. Yet on quiet nights it feels more like a pause than a puzzle. Perhaps life is rare, like a flower blooming in only a few places. Perhaps intelligence is fragile, fading before it can travel far. Or perhaps other civilizations choose to live quietly, like many creatures deep within forests that never raise their voices. We are listening with young instruments, and sometimes silence simply means the conversation has not yet begun. To think about this, humanity has created gentler ways of imagining. A certain equation was never meant to provide an exact answer, but rather a list of questions to ask. How many stars are born? How many of them hold planets? How many planets carry water? How many places allow chemistry to become complex enough to copy itself? Those numbers are not meant to close the story. They are like stones placed along a path, helping us understand where we walk through the mist. Because the most mysterious thing is not extraterrestrials. It is life itself. On Earth, life appeared rather soon after the planet cooled. Simple molecules began to connect and somehow learned to copy themselves. From there, time did the rest. Yet that first step, from chemistry to biology, remains a bridge we have not clearly seen. Perhaps it is easy, happening wherever water and energy exist. Or perhaps it is so rare that the universe must wait a very long time for it to occur even once. And so our attention turns toward water. Not only oceans beneath sunlight, but hidden oceans as well. There are worlds far from the sun where surfaces of white ice reflect faint light. From afar they seem still, like cold stones. Yet gravity from their parent planets continually stretches and releases them, like a gentle hand squeezing a rubber ball. That bending creates warmth within, and beneath the ice, water may still be moving. Europa is one such place. Its surface is broken into long fractures, like paint across a frozen lake that has just trembled. Measurements suggest a global ocean beneath, salty and deep. If water touches rock, chemistry may occur. And if chemistry continues long enough, other possibilities may follow. Farther away, a smaller moon carries a stranger gift. Cracks at its southern pole send plumes of water vapor and ice into space, like underground springs finding release. A spacecraft once flew through those plumes and tasted them. Within were salts, organic molecules, and signs that hot water once touched rock deep along an ocean floor. It is difficult to imagine a clearer invitation. No drilling is required. The ocean sends its own message outward. And then there is another world, slower in rhythm, wrapped within thick orange haze. Its rivers and lakes are not water, but liquid methane. Rain falls, evaporates, and returns again in familiar cycles, like earth reflected in a colder mirror. There, water is hard as stone, while methane flows like a sea. Within the dense atmosphere, faint sunlight drives complex chemical reactions, creating longer and heavier molecules, a natural laboratory unfolding in silence for millions of years. No one knows whether life could learn to begin in such an environment. But the question is gentle enough to exist without needing an immediate answer. When thinking of all these places, humanity's sense of loneliness sometimes becomes lighter, not because we are certain we have neighbors among the stars, but because the universe seems very fond of creating opportunities. Water beneath ice, chemistry within darkness, a signal that passed by and disappeared. Right now, somewhere very far away, an ocean may be touching softly against cold stone. A molecule may have just learned to copy itself for the first time. Another civilization may be looking up at their sky and wondering the same question we carry. No one knows. And perhaps that is what brings peace. Because between the certainty of gravity and the silence of space, hope does not need to be loud. It only needs to exist, like faint starlight, still able to guide a path through the night. You do not need to search for answers right now. Simply allow the question to drift gently through your mind, like a dream that has just begun, with much more sky still ahead. Deep physics and reality questions. And while distant oceans may still be moving beneath frozen layers of ice, while questions about life continue to unfold quietly without demanding hurried answers, human imagination takes another step forward. Not outward toward more distant stars, but inward, toward the very laws that allow everything to exist. As though, after gazing long enough at the sky, we suddenly realize that the greatest mystery may not lie in distance, but in the nature of reality itself. There are places in the universe where the story seems to pause before a door that cannot be opened from the outside. An object falling into a black hole carries with it its shape, its history, and every detail that once defined it. Yet from the outside, all that remains visible is mass, rotation, and electric charge. Every other sign disappears from observation. This has led many to wonder whether information, the physical memory of things, truly vanishes. In the world of small particles, information appears never to be allowed to disappear. But at the edge of a black hole, that rule seems to sway slightly, like a leaf standing before the wind. Some ideas suggest that nothing falling inward is erased at all, but instead recorded in a more delicate way, spread across that invisible boundary itself, like a fingerprint pressed upon water, expanding outward into very thin circles. No one sees it directly, yet perhaps the universe is a patient archivist, never forgetting anything, only changing the way it is preserved. Another thought feels even gentler. If empty space is not truly empty, if tiny particle pairs can appear and vanish in an instant, then near a black hole that fragile balance may be disturbed. One particle falls inward while the other escapes. From afar, it appears as though the black hole emits an extremely faint glow, not a violent flame, only a thin warmth, so slow that it would take longer than the current age of the universe to notice the change. The idea that something once believed eternal might slowly fade carries a strange feeling. Not a sudden ending, but a patient dissolving. Like morning mist disappearing as light gradually spreads across a field. And then imagination attempts another gentle step. If space and time can bend around massive objects, might there be shortcuts connecting distant places? Equations sometimes allow bridges of this kind. Tunnels passing through the structure of space itself. They are called, with a name that sounds almost like a fairy tale, wormholes. On paper, one could enter at one end and emerge elsewhere without crossing the distance between. But nature does not seem eager to keep such bridges open. They would close almost as soon as they formed, like lips gently sealing after a breath. To hold them open, people imagine unfamiliar forms of energy never yet observed. So far, the sky has offered no clear sign of them, and perhaps that is not a disappointment. Because sometimes distance itself allows the stars to keep their quietness. If such tunnels were to exist, the next question follows almost naturally. Could time bend in a similar way? We already know that clocks run differently when moving quickly or when close to strong gravity. This has been measured many times. But the idea of returning to one's own past feels like stepping into a room filled with mirrors. Equations occasionally allow strange loops where cause and effect meet each other. Yet when imagining this too long, paradoxes begin to appear. If the past changes, would the present remain? Perhaps for that reason, many believe nature holds a gentle safeguard, preventing such loops from becoming real. Like a story kept coherent by never allowing its pages to turn backward. Deeper still, two great languages of physics continue trying to understand one another. One language speaks of tiny particles, where everything vibrates with probability. The other describes curved space, where planets and galaxies move according to the shape of reality itself. Each language is correct within its own domain. But in the most extreme places, the center of a black hole or the first moment of the universe, they begin to disagree. Like two beautiful pieces of music, written in different rhythms. Humanity searches for a deeper melody, where both may become one. Perhaps it lies within vibrating strings smaller than particles. Perhaps within loops of space itself. Or perhaps it is something for which we do not yet possess the words. While waiting, another realization quietly grows. Even the emptiness we call space is not truly still. At the deepest level, energy fields continue to fluctuate. Tiny particles appear and vanish too quickly to be seen, yet their influence remains, like two metal plates placed close together, feeling a faint pull simply from the absence of vibration between them. Empty space, it turns out, also has a breath. If those fluctuations were stretched during the universe's earliest dawn, they may have become the seeds of later galaxies. A small vibration becoming a cluster of stars. A very slight asymmetry becoming a place where human beings would one day look up at the sky. The thought makes reality feel softer. That everything immense may begin from something very small. Right now, the room around you may seem still. The air quiet, the light gentle. Yet beneath it all, particles continue to move. Time continues to pass. Space itself curves subtly around the Earth. And in distant places, equations are still trying to tell their own story. You do not need to understand everything. Perhaps no one does. Because sometimes, simply knowing that reality runs deeper than what we see is enough to bring peace. like standing beside the sea at night, listening to waves without needing to see the ocean floor, only knowing that it is there, vast, patient, and still whispering, even as you slowly drift closer toward sleep. Cosmology, fate of the universe and the multiverse. And while the smallest fluctuations of empty space continue their quiet whispering, while reality itself seems deeper than what the eyes can reach, our gaze gently widens once more. No longer only a question of how the universe works, but of where it is going. Like standing beside a river in the evening, listening to the water pass and wondering which ocean the long path ahead will eventually meet. For many years, people have measured the universe's expansion in different ways. Light from nearby stars offers one rhythm. Ancient light from the earliest era tells a slightly different story. The two accounts do not completely agree. The difference is small, yet enough to make observers linger longer over their data. No one rushes to call it an error. Perhaps the measurements are still learning how to understand one another. Or perhaps the universe is keeping a detail yet untold, like two clocks placed in separate rooms, both measuring time yet quietly disagreeing about the present minute. Small differences like these do not shake the sky. Instead, they bring the feeling that the story is not finished. That even after learning to see billions of light years away, there remain soft edges where understanding has not yet reached. Another trace has also lingered quietly since the earliest days. When the universe was young, light elements formed within the intense heat of the beginning. Equations predict that a certain amount of lithium should exist within the oldest stars. Yet observations reveal slightly less than expected, not entirely missing, only reduced by a small portion. Perhaps stars have hidden it within deeper layers. Perhaps reactions not yet fully understood have subtly changed the outcome. Or perhaps the dawn of the universe was more complex than we once imagined. Sometimes, a small discrepancy is like a fold in fabric. It does not change the overall shape, but reminds us that the story contains many layers. Ahead of us, expansion continues. Space does not expand like an explosion moving into emptiness, but more like the fabric of reality itself being gently stretched. Distant galaxies drift farther apart with time. What drives this remains a soft question not yet closed. Some ideas suggest that dark energy is simply an inherent property of space itself, a steady presence, unchanging. Others imagine that it may evolve slowly with the age of the universe, a deep current we have only begun to touch. If it grows stronger over time, distances between galaxies could increase more rapidly still. In a far future, clusters of stars might separate. Farther beyond that, stars themselves could lose their bonds. And at the farthest edge of imagination, even atoms might fail to hold their structure. A dissolution without sound, not an explosion, only everything gradually releasing its hold on everything else. The thought may sound sorrowful, yet the time required for such a future is so vast that every civilization alive today occupies only the briefest blink within it. Trillions upon trillions of years would pass before such possibilities became meaningful. Another path feels gentler. If dark energy remains stable, stars will slowly fade as their fuel is exhausted. Galaxies will grow dimmer. Black holes will evaporate over spans of time almost impossible to imagine. Eventually, the universe may become cold and sparse, where the remaining particles drift within quiet darkness. No great event, only a very long evening. Some see loneliness in that vision. Others see rest, like a room after every conversation has ended and the lights have been turned off. And then, imagination opens yet another path, Perhaps expansion is not the final chapter. Perhaps the universe resembles a breath, expanding, then contracting, a cycle longer than any familiar sense of time. After becoming thin and cold, everything might slowly return toward closeness again. Another dawn waiting beyond a long night. Within such ideas, there is no absolute beginning or final ending, only rhythm, like waves repeating upon a shore. And if imagination travels even farther, some wonder whether our universe is unique at all. Somewhere beyond sight, other bubbles of reality may exist, each carrying slightly different laws. A place where physical constants shift a little. A place where light travels faster or slower. A place where stars never formed. No one has seen them. Yet the thought feels like realizing that the night sky may be only a small window opening onto a far larger garden. Strangely, the farther imagination travels, the quieter the feeling becomes. Because whether the future holds slow dissolution, repeating cycles, or countless neighboring universes drifting side by side, the present remains here. Earth continues to turn. Oceans still rise and fall beneath the moon. Tomorrow's sunlight will still touch familiar windows. Great questions do not take away the closeness of this moment. Right now, as you listen, galaxies continue drifting apart very slowly. Small differences in measurements are still being considered somewhere beneath laboratory lights. Ancient light continues crossing space to tell the story of the beginning. And wherever the universe may be going, it carries every moment that has ever existed within it. Perhaps that is what makes the story gentle. That between beginnings and endings, between models and hypotheses, there is always a quiet space where we are allowed simply to be present. You do not need to know how far the future reaches, only to feel the slow passing rhythm of time, like dark water carrying you a little farther, toward the calm that waits ahead. Human meaning and sleep closure. And then, after traveling far through ideas of beginnings and endings, through possibilities where the universe may expand forever or return within a slow breath no one can hear, our gaze gradually turns closer again, not because the great questions have found answers, but because sometimes not knowing gently leads us back to the most familiar place, humanity. Within that immense darkness, we do more than observe. We also send outward small signs of ourselves. Some scientists quietly listen to the sky, not searching for biological voices, but for traces of intelligence. A signal too orderly to be random. An artificial flash of light appearing within distant darkness. An atmosphere carrying signs of technology. These possibilities are not pursued with urgency, but more like placing an empty glass beside a window, waiting to see whether the wind might carry another sound. The thought that another intelligence may exist somewhere does not make the sky feel more distant. Instead, it softens the silence. Because if someone else is out there looking upward, they may be asking the same question, whether they are alone. While we listen, a few small messengers of humanity have already begun the longest journeys ever taken. They left Earth decades ago, carrying metal, wires, and fragile recordings containing the sound of ocean waves, laughter, heartbeats, and music. Those spacecraft were never meant to return. They drift beyond the edges of the solar system, passing beyond the sun's strongest influence, entering the space between stars. They are not in a hurry. For tens of thousands of years to come, they will continue drifting. Perhaps no one will ever find them. Perhaps they will remain silent objects among interstellar dust. Or perhaps, on a very distant day, another intelligence will lift that golden record and hear the sound of an ocean from a blue planet that once existed. The thought is not loud. It feels like placing a letter into moving water and letting it go. And then, when looking back at everything we have passed through, galaxies, invisible particles, endless possibilities, an old question returns, gentler than any physical mystery. Why is there something rather than nothing? No one knows for certain. Some say the vacuum is not truly empty, that small fluctuations of reality may give rise to worlds. Some believe mathematical laws themselves are enough to create existence. Others accept that the question may not require an answer at all, like asking why a piece of music exists instead of silence. Perhaps existence needs no reason beyond the fact that it is happening. Somewhere in the night, new telescopes are being built. Enormous mirrors will open greater distances still. Instruments sensitive enough to detect faint light from the universe's youth. Each generation places another window into the sky. And strangely, each time the window widens, the story does not become simpler. It becomes deeper. New questions appear gently, like stars emerging as eyes adjust to darkness. Perhaps that is the most beautiful part of this journey. Not finding a final answer, but realizing that human curiosity can move alongside quietness. That science, in its deepest form, is not a race, but a way of listening. Now, as the story begins to slow, you may notice the space around you drawing closer. Notice the room where you are lying or sitting. Distant sounds. The air touching your skin. The gentle weight of your body supported by a familiar chair or bed. The universe continues expanding out there. But you do not need to keep pace with it. Try breathing in slowly. No effort required. Simply allow the air to enter naturally, like a tide touching the shore. Pause for a brief moment. Then breathe out a little longer, as though you are setting down the remaining thoughts of today. Your shoulders may soften a little more. Your teeth do not need to stay clenched. Your forehead does not need to hold any questions now. The telescopes will continue observing for you. Distant spacecraft are still carrying humanity's story through the darkness. Somewhere, scientists remain awake, listening for faint signals from the sky. You do not need to do anything more. If another civilization exists, they may also be resting beneath their own sky. If no one else is there, the universe is still wide enough to hold all of our dreams. Breathe in once more. Slowly. And as you breathe out, imagine the night sky above as a deep ocean. Wide, quiet, and calm. The stars ask nothing of you. They simply remain. Like you're breathing, like this moment. If your eyes begin to feel heavy, you may allow them to close. You do not need to hear the entire story. You do not need to hold on to every thought. Because out there, the universe has been patient for billions of years. It can wait while you rest. Sleep gently. And when sleep arrives, allow it to come like light fading along the horizon, slowly, safely, and completely at peace.